This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, and welcome back to Death by Southwest, the podcast where each week I share a different grisly murder story unique to the American Southwest, while my sister and co-host tries to piece together the clues and unravel the mystery behind each of these heinous crimes. I'm your host, Margot, and Jenna is not with me because she did not do this episode with me, so I am doing this little intro by myself. And I just want to take you guys back. We're about to go into part 3, the final part of the Napa Valley Halloween Murders. And there is no sense of place or kind of trivia or intro on this episode. And considering we just got, I just saw a recent comment from someone that they used to love the show, but they are tired of the intros and wish we would just jump right into the crime. So this is the perfect episode for that commenter. But I want to take you back to kind of where we left off last week with part 2. And where we were last week is that the police had examined several different theories that somebody had an obsession with Leslie. They looked heavily into Christian Lee, Adrian's kind of on again, off again boyfriend. They even looked into a handyman that had been at the girl's house earlier that day, but none of that panned out to anything. They had just officially released Adrian and Leslie's identities to the public on November 2nd. And then on November 3rd, they had gotten some of the lab results back on the DNA. And it was confirmed that the suspect, whoever it was definitely a man. They were hoping to get more information, but that would take some more time. And since the various love interests and close inner circle of the girls had kind of resulted in nothing in terms of finding a suspect, the police then widened their investigation and were pursuing every possible theory, from a satanic cult to a stalker to anything. But they still came up empty-handed and had no suspects at this time. And that is where we will pick back up and continue this part 3, the final chapter in the Napa Valley Halloween Murders. Hope you guys enjoy it. And as always, thank you for listening. We appreciate and love all of you. Okay, let's get into it.
Now we're just barely a week out from the murders, so fine. But on Saturday, November 6th, police called a community meeting to give Nappins. Do you know that's what people who live in Napa are called? Nappins?
Nappins?
Yeah, they give Nappins an update on the
Are they sleepy people? I mean, they drink all that fucking wine, you know what I mean? It's kind of nice outside. Just take a little nap in the sun after having some Merlot, you know?
That's true.
Fuck it.
So they had a community meeting to give Nappins an update on the investigation. More than 500 residents, some who were curious, some who were angry, some who were scared, some who were worried, packed the multi-purpose room at the Harvest Middle School. And one of the authorities said, quote, "It's our belief that this was a directed attack. There are very specific reasons we believe that. We aren't just trying to tell you something and try to make you feel good. We want to be as forthcoming as we can, but we don't want to do anything that will damage this case. We're working this case for a successful prosecution," which I feel like is like, no shit. You told me nothing in that. You're trying to like have a successful case where you catch somebody and can prosecute them without releasing too much information that could fuck it up. No shit.
Well, people are, like, how come you haven't caught him yet? Are we safe? What's going on? Is it directly attacked us, or is it going to happen again, true. You know?
So he's saying it's not a serial killer. This was a specific attack on these 2 women. Yeah. Or one of the women, at least. So on Tuesday, November 9th, Adrian was buried. So this is a direct quote from the book that I read about this. It says, "That evening, Adrian's 2 sisters, Lexi and Allison, and 5 friends climbed into a stretch limo to remember their friend. Along for the ride was Ben Katz, Christian Lee, Lily Prudhomme, Derek Santiago, and Lexi's husband, Rob. The ride went by in a blur of tears and emotions. They stopped at a bar or 2 in and around Santa Rosa, but mostly kept themselves inside the limo. As the limo dropped off Lily that night, she was inconsolable. Her and Adrian were like newer friends, but they had met through work at the sanitation place, I believe. But they got really close really quickly. Lily said Adrian had an easy, enduring quality. She was funny and smart and quick-witted. She liked people and people liked her. She also pointed out that Adrian was no pushover. She was easy to get along with, but she could also be very difficult. She was a little bossy, and she knew what she wanted. I thought this was funny. She said if you ordered food in a restaurant and they didn't bring it correctly, there was no combing over it. She wasn't going to say, it's okay, I'll eat it, it's fine. She was sending it back.
You ever see the movie Waiting?
Yeah, of course.
Maybe it was a waiter. She was like a bitch there, and she was like, oh, my steak isn't what I want.
Oh, maybe.
And then dun, steak knife.
Whoa.
I don't know. It's probably not true. But
Well, I like all the fucking theories you're throwing out here.
I mean, there's a lot going on. I'd look at everybody.
So Lily was very upset, but there was a small silver lining for Lily in this, and that's that dealing with this tragedy had brought her and her ex-fiance, Eric, back together. Now, you remember Eric and Lily were together at the beginning of the story when they helped Adrian move into the house. But since then, they had broken up, and now, obviously, finding out about the sad death of their friend kind of brought them back together. They had met in high school and been going out on and off for about 8 years, and they had planned to get married on November 1st, 2004, which was essentially the day that, it was Halloween they were murdered, but it was at like 2:00 in the morning. So technically November 1st. So they were planning to get married on that day.
The day after Halloween?
The day after Halloween. But Lily called it off and they never did.
Instead of rice, candy corn thrown?
Maybe. I would love that.
I mean, there'd be a lot left over.
Several days after this, Tuesday, November 9th was Adrian's funeral. Several days later was Leslie's funeral in Anderson, South Carolina. Over 300 people showed up to Leslie's funeral. Do you think 300 people would show up to your funeral? Maybe. I guess maybe.
Why do you say maybe?
Well, I mean, I would say for myself, like, no way. Like, there's like, I don't.
Oh, you're very sweet. There's so many people.
I wouldn't have 300 people. Like maybe 50 people.
That's a lot.
300 is a lot of people. It
I
really
know I'm
is.
going to bring this up, and it's like a thing, but, I'm obsessed with Band of Brothers, that HBO show about World War II. And in the end scene, they talk about all the guys who survived and, like, what they did after the war and all that stuff. But there's one guy, George Luz, who was like, he kept everybody's spirits up. And what they said about him, they're like, this guy went on to work this and went that. But one of the things they're all to a testament to this guy's character. When he died in 1997, 1,500 people. And he was a handyman from Rhode Island. 1,500 people showed up to his funeral.
And that's a true story.
True story.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a well-liked human being.
Yeah.
I don't think either of us would have even 300.
Well, my dad, when he passed away, it was very emotional, and my mom wanted to keep it kind of small.
Yeah.
But I believe my dad would have had
A lot more people.
hundreds of people.
Yeah.
He knew everybody, like the UPS driver. Like we were walking one day in a store, and he was like, said hi to this guy. He's like, hey, what's up? He's like, how are the kids and everything? And I was like, all right. I was like, I've never seen that guy. And my dad's like, oh, yeah, he was a UPS driver who dropped off at my store when I worked at the store 5 years ago. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, your dad was that guy, though. He was the guy that cared about everybody. We don't have to keep talking about him.
Let's keep going. Cut it out.
Okay. On November 12th, the mayor of Napa, Ed Henderson, made an announcement revealing that the community had collectively raised $100,000 in reward money. So this was an incentive for anyone who could provide information to aid in the identification, arrest, and conviction of the person behind these double murders. $100,000 in 12 days. Napa's pretty rich, I guess.
Yeah, but also people want this person caught because they don't want to.
True.
They don't want to go to bed at night knowing that there's a person out there,
That's true. November 14th, there was a vigil for Adrian and Leslie that was organized by Lily and Leslie's friend Ben. And Lauren was there, and she was just in shock still. She said, I don't understand how a person can do that and go on with his life. I've thought about that so many times. It's like he is still going on with his life right now without any of this affecting him. maybe it has affected him. I don't know, but he's still functioning in society after doing something this horrendous. It's incomprehensible, which that's true. I mean, I that gave me pause. Like this, he like brutally murdered 2 women and he's just out in the world.
Well, I mean, we don't know what he's doing. He could be on like the run, like it freaked him out, and like he's traveling across the country. We don't know who this person is, you know. But yeah, I can imagine like if it's a person in the community, it's like, oh, I'm just like, oh,
Well,
hey
I mean,
Bob,
I would
how's it
imagine
going? You know.
I mean, I would imagine if you murder 2 people in a small community, you want to get the fuck out of there immediately.
Well,
right?
not unless you live there. You know, it'd be
Yeah,
weird.
that's
Like,
that's
Daryl, why did Steve just leave? You know, he has a good job at the hardware store, but he just like up and left. You know,
That's true. That's true.
2 people just got killed. You got to keep it cool. You know.
So as the investigation went on, police continued to collect DNA from any and all males who knew or interacted with Leslie and Adrian. They had no official suspects, but they had a theory that Leslie was the intended victim again, and that it was maybe an ex. They thought it had to do with some type of love interest or stalker. And friends and family agreed. One of Leslie's close friends, Amy Brown, said, "I'm convinced of that. I think she's a target because she knows a lot of people. She was social. She went out. She met millions of new faces, and she ran into old faces. She was a target because of who she was, and she had." Police discovered many men in her life, even some that Leslie had men in her life that even she didn't know about. She had men who would buy her expensive presents. She had men who built websites about her. It was an ex-boyfriend who did that. And she had someone who was sending her cash in the mail in unmarked envelopes. She didn't know who it was from, but she just continued to get cash in the mail.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think that's problematic, though?
I mean, I think it's suspicious.
I mean, I know you'd be like, woo, free cash.
Yeah, I'd be thrilled.
Well, I think someone's going to kill you.
I'd be thrilled about it. Well, Leslie had confided in some of her close friends about the money, and she wasn't certain who was sending it, but she did have a suspicion. And this prompted the police to uncover the biggest secret from Leslie's past that Leslie didn't even know about until she was an adult.
Don't miss what happens next in today's episode. We'll be right back after a short message from our sponsors.
Leslie had been getting money, and it was a secret so buried in her life that she remained unaware of it until she was an adult.
Can I speculate or no?
Sure.
Her father wasn't a real father.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it. That's all I have.
You didn't nail it, but you're not 100% off. So, at Hardy Correctional Institution in Bowling Green, Florida, a maximum security prison about 100 miles east of Tampa, is where Leslie's biological father, Lenny Mazzara, was. And the story is pretty long, so I'm not going to, it's like a whole nother podcast to tell the story of her dad. But basically the short version is that he worked for some dangerous and local gangsters. He was involved in drugs, and he was hired to do a hit on a man who owed his boss money in 1980. Unfortunately, while he was taking care of this hit, the man who he was killing, his girlfriend walked in as Lenny was stabbing the man that he was hired to kill, and he ended up stabbing and slitting the girlfriend's throat as well.
Whoa.
So him and 2 other men were convicted of the murders, and Lenny was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms and received an additional 30-year sentence for conspiracy. So Leslie didn't know this her whole life. I don't know exactly how she found out, but she did as an adult. And once she knew who he was, she wanted to get to know him. So first she started writing letters, then phone calls.
The murderer hitman?
Yeah. And then
she's like, I wonder how sweet he was.
Well, it was her dad. And so she wanted to get to know him. And so letters, phone calls, and then in-person visits. So not long after she was killed and Lenny found out, detectives showed up at the jail to talk to him.
He can't lawyer up, by the way.
Right. And At first, when I read that, I was like, well, like, obviously he didn't do it. And he committed this murder in 1980. We're in 2004, 24 years later.
I'm thinking a revenge killing.
Well, that's what they were thinking too. And they also were suspicious because, and I think this is a really interesting point, there aren't too many contract killers, like contract hits, that are carried out with a stabbing.
Yeah, it seems a little messy, you know?
Right.
Well, it's also like maybe it's personally ordered. It's like you need to fuck this person up, make a message, you know?
I don't know, but that's not common, and obviously that's a correlation between Leslie's murder, stabbing.
Yeah.
So
well, that's common.
Police were curious about whether there was any way that Leslie's death was connected to her father's crime. They wanted to know if
they're reaching at this point because
they
they're
are
trying to figure it out.
Yeah. They wanted to know if Lenny had enemies, someone from his past that was seeking revenge. Lenny said, I thought this was completely stupid. This was over 20 years ago. But they did say to him, were you sending her money? And he explained that he was at one time, but not anymore. And they said, well, someone was sending her money. And Lenny said, how much? And they said, a lot. And Lenny said, what's a lot? But they wouldn't tell him how much or what a lot of money was. And then they left soon after that.
Obviously, we're going to get to how much money it was, huh?
We'll see. As time went on, more and more men were eliminated based on their DNA, and police still had no leads. Families were frustrated. The residents of Napa were living in fear, and life in Napa was kind of dark and depressing since these murders.
Yeah, there's a murder on the loose. Like, it's California. It's kind of liberal. Probably no one has a gun.
Well, Todd Schulman, the detective, said, quote, this has robbed a lot of people of their sense of security they have. People are searching for a reason as to why this happened. I've talked to some longtime cops who have been here for 30 years, and they think this is the most violent crime they've ever seen here. It's a once-in-a-career type thing in Napa. So in January 2005, Adrian's mom got some kind of good news amidst, because Adrian's mom lived in Napa, and life was like pretty dark there at this point. So January 2005 is a couple months after the murder. Adrian's best friend, Lily, had gotten back together with Eric, and they were going to actually go through with the wedding that they had canceled now. The murders had brought them closer, and Adrian's mom, that was the one good thing that she could, she was trying to find some positivity in this. And she was like, well, I'm happy that Lily's happy. Lily said, Adrian's death made me reevaluate what's important in life and making sure that my friends and family know that I love them. And Eric and I both reevaluated. We've been together almost 8 years. It's time to get married. So Adrian's entire family was at Lily and Eric's wedding, and Lily dedicated a dance that she did to Adrian. It was Adrian's favorite song by Maroon 5 called She Will Be Loved. And it was a happy day in Napa. A lot of, in a small town, a lot of people were there. It was kind of a day of celebration. And even though it was Lily's wedding, they did a lot of remembering of Adrian. But even though Lily and Eric and many others were celebrating and dancing, the police were growing very frustrated.
Yeah, 2 months without a suspect or even any leads.
And that continued for nearly a year.
Whoa.
Over 11 months, there was 11 months of this manhunt. The police conducted over 1,300 interviews and collected 218 DNA samples. And the investigation took them across 8 different states.
And bupkis.
And nothing. So the DNA had ruled out all of the men in both ladies' lives, that the men that they had taken DNA from. But now they had a new theory. They were thinking murder for hire. But most people weren't convinced that this was a viable answer.
Well, it's like, what do they have to gain?
Well,
You know
but
what I
they're
mean? It's like
thinking
money.
because the DNA, they couldn't match the DNA to anybody in the girls' lives. So what if somebody in the girls' lives hired somebody else?
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. But the Detective Schulman said the violent nature of this crime, I just don't think that that's what this is. And
yeah, it seems like a little aggressive, like
personal.
Yeah.
Right. So by the end of the summer of 2005, the lab in Florida that had determined that the DNA was a male had some additional results for the Napa police. They were able to get somewhat of the killer's ancestry. The killer was, according to them, 96% Northern European, 4% Southeastern European. And the lab told the cops with 85% certainty the killer had blue or green eyes.
Okay, kind of narrows it down
A little
bit. I mean, it's some information.
So
They're European for sure.
at this point now, police were really convinced for this entire time that the DNA was going to be the answer. But obviously it wasn't. So they now went back to the cigarettes and the specific brand of cigarettes.
What was the brand?
Camel Turkish Gold.
Oh, I used to smoke those.
Yeah, they were, I guess back in 2004, it was like not that popular of a brand. Like it was a pretty distinct brand.
No, it was.
Yeah.
Pack of Turkish Golds.
Yeah.
You know?
So police now they're like, okay, well, we're going to go with this. And they started going from store to store, from gas station to gas station.
Who buys these cigarettes?
Do you know anybody who buys these cigarettes regularly from you? Can we look at your, do you have any surveillance tape from several days before, several days after Halloween? So we could see maybe, is it somebody that we interviewed? Is it somebody, whoever? The detective said the cigarettes were distinctive. It's a unique brand. It had only been on the market for 14 months at this point.
Yeah, because I think I started smoking them in like '05 or something, you know?
And it wasn't, and apparently in the beginning, they weren't sold in every gas station and convenience store. They were specialized. Like only certain stores carried them. So that, to me,
I remember they had like
it's narrow. Narrows it down a lot.
Yeah, and they had like a blue, like I said, I used to smoke them.
I have no idea. I did not smoke them.
I did.
No.
And I'm definitely not the killer.
Good to know. But police really didn't get anywhere with asking the stores. So then they turned to Lauren, and they had questioned her multiple times throughout this. They had ruled her out as the killer. It was a male DNA. It obviously wasn't her. She didn't hire anyone. She was cooperative the entire time.
What about the murder for hire and the racket upstairs?
Well, at this point, she was not a suspect. And she was still being cooperative and helping them. So they went to her. I mean, this is a year after this happened. Like, this poor girl wants to move on, I'm sure. Not move on, but like leave it in the past a little bit. But they went to her and asked if she could think of anyone in her that she knew or that Adrian and Leslie hung out with that smoked cigarettes and those specific type of cigarettes. And at first Lauren was like, nah, I don't really know anybody that smokes outside of like occasionally socially. But then she had a kind of a subconscious memory, and she was like, I remember people smoking in the house at one point because somebody didn't like it. And it came to her that Lily and her new husband, Eric, they had helped Adrian move into the house, and both of them at the time had smoked. And the cops asked, do you remember what kind of cigarettes? She didn't. But those were really the only people she knew that were in their lives that were smokers, like regular smokers. And so Lauren said, did you question both of them? Did you get DNA and rule at least Eric out? And the detective was like, yeah, I'm sure. Of course we did. And he went back into his database. Nope. They never took Eric's DNA.
What?
Somehow he had just slipped under the radar because he was so close, and I don't know. They overlooked him. He was so close that they didn't look deeply into him. They probably talked to him very quickly, but then never went back and got his DNA, like probably talked to him almost immediately after the murders. So on September 7th, Detective Schulman called Lily at Napa Sanitation District and asked for Eric's phone number. She said, Eric's taken a new job at Brooks and Associates in Yountville. And Eric was out in the field, as he often was since he was a surveyor. So Detective Schulman left a message with the secretary asking Eric to give him a call. 2 weeks went by before Schulman realized that he hadn't heard back from Eric. It was September 20th.
He just realized?
I know. But in his defense, there's
a lot of shit going on.
Right. Yeah. This was a year ago. And he's also, I'm sure, not thinking randomly, suddenly a year later we come across the guy. Like, no, but they do have to rule him out. So September 22nd, and they were getting ready to release the information to the public. And they did on that day about the cigarettes. They said that they were hoping that this little piece of information would prompt someone in the public to come forward. Like, oh, I know someone who smokes Turkish Golds or whatever. So 5 days.
Do you think it's the newly married couple?
Well, I know who it is.
Oh, obviously, God damn it.
So 5 days after releasing this information to the public on September 27th, 2005, Commander Jeff Trondley, I don't know, had concluded his work for the day. He walked across the street to go work out at his gym, and then he was going to head home. But he went back into the office to do a few emails and got in his car. He's sitting in the police parking area and is about to pull out when another officer pulled up next to him and said, like, roll down your window. He's like, where are you going? And Jeff said, home. And the officer said, you might want to rethink that. Some people just walked in, and one of them says that he killed Adrian Insania and Leslie Mazzara. And Jeff was like, shut up. In his head, he's thinking, oh, it's somebody who's like literally crazy in the head, or somebody who wants to get attention. And so the person that this other police officer was talking about that had walked in had willingly waived their legal rights and was providing a candid account of their actions to Officer Russ Davis, a member of the gang unit. Schulman and Trondley went into a adjacent room where they could watch this kind of going on. And what made it even more surprising was the identity of the person being interrogated was someone that none of them had ever suspected. It was a person who had entered the police station carrying a pack of Camel Turkish Golds. And they questioned this person for several hours and really, really wanted to find out what the motive was behind this. But they couldn't. He kept saying, the detective kept saying, it doesn't add up. Something's missing. He's holding something back. So who was it? I'm asking you. Who do you think it was?
The guy who smokes Turkish Golds.
Eric.
Yes.
Lily's husband.
I knew it from the beginning.
So who is this Eric?
Well, he smokes Turkish Golds.
He does. He was 26, clean criminal record, and he admitted that he took the lives of both Adrian and Leslie. He had dealt with depression and apparently thoughts of suicide for his whole life. He was a heavy drinker as kind of a coping mechanism. He was described as very shy, super quiet.
Can I say something?
Mm-hmm.
He's the son of the girlfriend that got killed accidentally during the hit.
No, he's not.
No, I was reaching. It was more
No, he's the husband of Adrian's best friend.
I know, but it doesn't mean he can't be the son of the girlfriend who got accidentally killed when her dad, biological father, killed that person.
Oh, Leslie. Wow.
Yeah,
Your brain is going really deep here.
Watch a lot of TV.
So the depression, the suicide. I mean, I hate to say that like that played a role in this because there are plenty of people in the world who are depressed or even who have been suicidal and they're not going out and murdering people. So
yeah, it's kind of a step.
Yeah, I don't agree with this, but that was said in several articles that the police felt like his mental state and depression played a part in this, but they still didn't understand it. They wanted a motive. Like why? Why would he randomly go kill his wife's best friend and another random roommate that he didn't really know?
I'm also thinking that right now.
Yes. But he wouldn't give much of an explanation. All he said is that he knew the women who were murdered and that he did it. He gave them information about the crime scene that was not released to the public and explained everything that happened. Plus, the DNA was a match.
Oh, we got him.
It was him. He made it clear that he was not confessing out of a sense of guilt or remorse. He said the only reason he was confessing is because he knew they were eventually going to find him because of all the DNA testing, and he saw on the news that they were looking for someone who found his cigarettes.
Switch to Marlboros, bro.
Yeah, and they even did. Apparently, he had blue or green eyes, so they had his description correct as well. Did
he have blue or green eyes?
I don't know.
Probably blue. Green eyes are kind of rare, you know?
Following an extensive search of his home, investigators found a suicide note that Eric had written. And the note revealed that he was very jealous of Lily's friendship with Adrian. And he felt that Adrian was pulling Lily away from him. And he even felt that Adrian was the reason Lily broke off their engagement in 2004 because Adrian apparently kept telling Lily, you can do better. Like, you can do better than Eric. He's not the one for you.
I mean, obviously he's going to be a killer.
Well, I mean, clearly Lily was right. He was not the one for her. But he believed that, you know, I think that some of this is true, but I also think that probably some of this he's exacerbating in his brain.
Well, he's obviously crazy because he murdered 2 people.
So he did say that he hadn't intended to kill anyone. He said he had been at a party earlier that night where him and Lily, they were not married at this point, remember? They had broken up, had kind of had an argument, an encounter. And his temper escalated, and he, like, that night was thinking, Adrian is for sure the reason that we broke up. Lily said something that made him really feel that way that night, and he had been heavily drinking. And so in his mind, he was like, I'm going to go talk to Adrian and, like, let her know that, like, I am good enough for Lily and I should be with Lily. And he remembered entering the house by breaking in the kitchen window, which, like, if you're going there to talk to her without intent of harming anybody, why are you breaking in? You know, I mean, either way.
It's not a good way to start a
he said that
conversation.
After that, he remembers nothing. He experienced a blackout and hours later regained consciousness without any recollection of the events that transpired. But investigators were like, okay, first of all, that feels far-fetched. But after he left, he burned all of his clothes and shoes that same night. So that told them, like, no, he knows what he did was wrong. He knew, obviously. And they think that he didn't confirm this, but police now believe that he entered Leslie's room first by mistake. And his and hers was a murder of opportunity. That's what they called it. He killed her first to get her out of the way so he could get to his real target, Adrian.
That makes sense.
So he was charged with a double murder, and he pleaded guilty on both charges. And in January 2007, an agreement was reached that Koppel would be sent to prison for the rest of his life without the possibility of parole in exchange for not getting the death penalty. He also waived his right to ever appeal. This was shocking to me. As he was receiving his sentence and he was going to be jailed, his wife Lily said, "In the days before he confessed, I knew something was terribly bothering him. I told him, Eric, there is nothing in this world that you could do to make me love you less. Those words are just as true today as they were that afternoon."
Jesus.
I mean, I'm sorry. If you murdered my best friend and somebody else, I would love you less.
Yeah,
or not at all.
Yeah, I think you lose the love.
I mean, I don't I would be so curious to hear from any of our listeners, like, their opinion on that. Like, I guess your love can't disappear if you're with somebody for 8 years and you're married. It can't disappear instantly, but, like, I am not professing my undying love to you as you're being sent to prison for murder. That's
of
crazy.
Your friend.
Right, of my best friend.
And also killed her for, she thought, you know,
for a ridiculous reason.
Yeah, ridiculous.
I mean, there's never a
also,
good reason to murder, but,
she
like,
murdered a second person. Like, he murdered a second person.
Yeah.
It's, like, pretty intense, like stabbing him to death.
He also spoke in court, and he said, "I am a broken man, a man splintered by a penetrating awareness of my own potential for wickedness. While I cannot fathom the full extent of the anguish that I have caused, I recognize that my sinful deeds have inflicted terrific agony on a number of people. The words evade me to articulate the depths of my sorrow." He's a good speaker. He is incarcerated today at the Pleasant Valley State Prison in Coalinga, California. And
he will be there for the rest of his life.
And Lily, who publicly defended her love for him on the stand, still lives in the same exact neighborhood where the murders happened in Napa.
And people don't have a problem with her?
I would imagine they probably do.
There's old Lily, killer lover.
Now here's another question for you. She went a full year living with him, married to him, got married to him, actually. Like, Adrian's mother spoke at his wedding. And Lily never knew. She never had any. If you murdered 2 people and you weren't caught for a year and we're married and living together and spending as much time as we spend together now, don't you think I would have some inkling of something, that something was off? You think that you can hide it that well?
Well, I think that you think about like Jeffrey Dahmer, he's like a sociopath, psychopath, whatever, like we've talked about before.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't really think he did anything wrong. It doesn't really affect him. So it's probably the same kind of person. Like you just live your life because it's not really affecting you. It's the same kind of a manner of a hitman is a sociopath, psychopath, but they're like doing it for a job.
Yeah.
It's still crazy. You're still murdering people, but also it's not personal.
Well, I understand. Oh, so you're saying he would have given no signs? Like he could have, he just, well,
Yeah, he could have
according
just-
to him, he didn't remember doing it. So he was just living life like, I don't know what
maybe he
happened.
was like, why? Well, he obviously
I don't
burned
believe-
his shoes and
Yeah,
shit.
yeah,
You
I know, I don't believe
He
that.
understands it.
That's what I'm saying.
What I'm trying to think is after going through that and everything.
Can you imagine
no
though?
leads,
Like,
whatever.
Think about it. He was at the vigil.
You know
Adrian's
what's a big fuck up? I think more than anything. How the fuck did you not get that guy's DNA?
I
You know what
mean, but
he's like directly related to the case.
But I think that's why, because he was so closely related that they spoke to him probably immediately after, because they spoke to all the people closest to them. And at that point, they weren't collecting DNA. The next day after the murder, they weren't collecting DNA at that point. They then went back. You know what I mean?
And then they're trying to find it.
Right. So they probably just forgot to go back to him. But
It's kind of a fuck up.
it's a big oversight for sure. And it just blows my mind that like he spent a year mourning the people that he killed.
And also like the wedding and everything. Like
The wedding, the vigil.
showing no emotion during that. That's a
Oh.
heavy thing. Like obviously he's
Like
a
her
fucking insane person.
Right. Her mom is speaking. They dedicated a song and a dance to Adrian.
And
he killed her? I
he's
mean,
obviously a
deranged.
sociopath,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So is that what you expected?
I mean, no.
Okay. Well, good.
Yeah, it's funny though, is the exchange, like in that, you know, like does make sense with his sentencing. That person doesn't give a shit whether he's in prison or wherever he's at. He's all for exchange for no death penalty because he wants
Yeah.
to live. He doesn't care where he lives.
Yeah, I don't know
I'd be
what-
like, fuck no, kill him.
But
you know?
what I think, I don't know what it was in exchange for, I guess, pleading guilty and not
Yeah,
having like
it's-
a big drawn out
Yeah,
trial.
it saves,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Saves
Like,
money. It saves trauma for the
it's such-
families.
It's such bullshit that, you know, saving money like allows someone to live their life. I know he's like in a supermax prison, but
He's still alive.
But that kind of person, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
They wouldn't.
We talked about this the other night.
They
It's
wouldn't
a-
be in prison like we would be in prison. Like you'd be ruined. You'd be like, oh, my dogs. I don't have like my
Yeah,
life.
it would
I came
destroy
out
me.
here.
I'd much rather die.
You're also not kind of a person that can just like slaughter two people and be like, oh,
No, but
I'll
I would
get married to her friend tomorrow.
Right. Now I will say this. I agree. I could, if I was in a supermax prison, I would be destroyed. Like I don't know how I could ever survive that for the rest of my life. I couldn't survive that. I would just want to die every single day. But I also think that that's what I say now. But people are absurdly resilient, and they make you could live with anything. You can learn to live with just
Well,
about anything. So somebody who's in a supermax prison is going to make a life for themselves in there that is shitty, I'm sure, and terrible, but it is a life. It is livable. Like there are certain things that he looks forward to, or work that he does, or working out, or there are certain things that he still does that he has to find some type of joy from. So that is some type of life.
Like in a supermax prison, like they don't.
There's
they're
no
not, like-
working out.
You're not like going out to the yard because you're super dangerous. So is everybody else. Like you're
really?
in your cell all the time.
All the time?
Yeah, they like bring a shower. It rolls and they like open the door. You get in and get out. You spend all your
What?
time.
Oh.
And when you go out to like a yard or something like that,
You're
like-
gated in by yourself.
yeah, by
Yeah.
yourself, and you're like in a small space. That you walk around. There's like some sun hitting you. You know,
It
It's
makes
not-
me sick to my stomach.
It's
to
not
think
like you're
about.
like socializing with other people. It's very intense like that.
Oh, that makes me uncomfortable.
But also, like, we don't know. Maybe that guy's living in hell because he thought, oh, well, I watched a bunch of shows with prison and, like, I go in the yard and, like,
Well, that's
get
what
in a
I
group
just-
of people.
that's what I
you
just
know?
thought.
Yeah, well, that's not true.
Well, that sounds awful. That's worse than death to me.
Yeah, it would be for me, too.
Yeah. But for him, I get what you're saying. His brain is so kind of sideways that it
Also,
doesn't
you
affect
can't-
him in that way.
You also
And we
can't
don't know
think
that.
about that, like, whether he got drunk or not. Broke into the house, killed one person, killed the other person,
And then let everyone
and then marry her friend.
right, and then
You know what I mean?
let everyone search and be traumatized for a year. Yeah,
I
it's
think
terrible.
the biggest to this story, no offense to the detectives or anything, I'm sure it's a hard job, but
Yeah. It
They
was a
collected everybody's
it
DNA.
was an oversight. It was.
What's weird, thus an interesting part of this entire story is that I used to smoke those cigarettes. I loved them. Camel.
That is
Yeah.
not the most interesting part of this entire story.
To me, it is because you're all a particular pack of cigarettes. I was like, it's some Russian brand or some shit like that. And you're all Camel Turkish Golds. Have you ever heard of them? And I'm like, I wish I had one right now. I think they're discontinued.
God. All right. Well, that is our story. Thank you guys for listening. We will be back with a bonus and a new episode and whatnot up until we leave for Belize.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of lookup on this one.
There's a lot of lookup on this one. Definitely. I'm excited to
Great
do
story, though. I really enjoyed it.
Good. I'm glad. I hope everyone else enjoyed it. And that's it. Please go. We really appreciate everyone who leaves us reviews on Apple. Love getting your DMs. I am still working my way through all of the DMs, but I love hearing from everyone. Join our Patreon. And what does Jenna say? On the bonus episode, she says, hug your loved ones. And on these, she says, good night and good luck.
Pet your animals.
That's a good one, too. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys.
Later.
Death by Southwest is hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Executive produced by Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Jenna Schneider.
Audio editing and sound design by Margot Carmichael.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, good night and good luck.